Hey everybody, Shoebox Legends here. Thanks for joining me today for a pre-war themed baseball video that doesn't actually feature any pre-war cards. So I'll explain here, but the card that you see sort of in the center here featuring Wilbur Bullet Joe Rogan from the Ted Williams set in the mid-90s. Had shown that one recently in a mail day video, picked it up on eBay because I learned a little bit more about Rogan recently, and I obviously talked about how and we all know the Negro Leagues statistical history is patchy and sketchy at best, but most people agree he was one of the premier players in the Negro Leagues. Just a really intriguing guy. I'm not qualified in any way to give a full, breakdown on his life and career. But as I learned more and more about him, I was really just fascinated to hear some of the stories, anecdotally, and look at some of the limited stats that are available. And I think he's just a really intriguing player. And I mentioned when I showed that card recently that, not surprisingly, I suppose, it's a little bit unfortunate, but there aren't a lot of cards out there of, Bullet Rogan. There just aren't. Obviously, playing era cards are not going to be a thing when it comes to Negro League players. There weren't any, sets produced or anything like that. But even, post-career and post-life, there really just hasn't been a lot issued. Searching eBay and ComC and Sport Lots and all the usual haunts, just couldn't really turn up much on that Rogan. So I grabbed 2 copies of that Ted Williams for $1 each and kind of moved on, but kept his name in the back of my mind. And as luck would have it, I found a much cooler card of his, courtesy of Helmar Brewing. And before we get to that card, just a little bit of backdrop and kind of setting the scenery. Helmar Brewing is a company somewhere in the Midwest, I forget exactly where, that creates custom art cards for baseball and other sports, but primarily baseball. And I've really grown to get into some of their stuff over the years. I'm not, a super collector. I do prefer officially licensed, era authentic playing cards, but in some cases, I think there's an argument to be made for these Helmar art cards. And this is one that I have here featuring Mickey Doolin of the Baltimore Terrapins. Like, how cool is that? And you can see a little bit of the turtle logo here just peeking out. But this is a design that they've done over the years called Oasis, with this kind of interesting art-themed border. And in this case, a Cycle cigarettes pack with some cigarettes actually sticking out, which I just think is a hilarious touch. It has a back, a Cycle cigarettes back. They have different backs on these, much like some of the older authentic pre-war cards. And these are just great. These are handmade. Every one of these, they commission their own authentic artwork. So obviously these aren't individual paintings. They do reproduce these, but the paintings that are used to create the cards are all done specifically for Helmar by their own contracted artists. And they just put a lot of love and care into creating these cards and into the subjects that they choose. Like you can see, this Oasis brand is a little bit thicker than a normal card, and it has some layers to it because it is a framed card. So if you look here, the outer border of the card is actually a frame that is raised up or embossed, whereas the level below it that has the player portrait is inset into the frame. So this card has, 3 layers to it, probably a front, a back, and a painting in the middle. And they just assemble these in a really quality manner. They're sturdy, they feel great, they look great, the colors are vibrant, they just seem like they could come right out of the era that they're aiming for. They wear down the corners and edges to give them some character. And I just think they're fantastic. So, and all of that, they run eBay auctions every week, and every Tuesday night their auctions end, and they probably have somewhere between 50 and 100 cards that come out, and they put this level of, love and care into all of those cards every week. And they only release these in pretty limited quantities, and they do carefully track how many of each card is released. You can actually create an account on the Helmar website and track your collection and see print runs, but they retire sets after a number of years, and they only print a few cards per week. So these actually become pretty scarce, and there's a decent market of competition for these out there, and I can totally see why. I've fallen in love with them myself. I have one more example here, and then we'll get to the card that I really want to show today. but also from the Oasis set. This is Clyde Milan for Washington. This is also the Cycle Cigarettes variation from this set. Has the same Cycle Cigarettes back as the Mickey Doolin that we looked at a moment ago. And again, just some of that awesome wear and color. Love the bright, vibrant colors on these, like the nice pink here behind Doolin, the green behind Clyde Milan. They're awesome. And I was explaining this to a buddy recently, Kin, over at Bean's Ball Card blog. But what really draws me to these, I think, is they're an opportunity. They're well-crafted cards that look period authentic, and they're an opportunity to add players into my collection that either don't have cards or whose cards are so scarce that I can't afford them. Because I like my collection to be sort of a timeline of the history of baseball. And as is the case with like a Bullet Joe Rogan, if you just stick to the mainline manufacturers, there's pretty big gaps in that timeline due to just lack of availability or affordability. And so I think these Helmar cards are just a great way to fill in those gaps. And so all of that comes around full circle here after 6 minutes of gabbing to the fact that a Bullet Joe Rogan got listed in the weekly Helmar listings not more than a week or two after I showed that Ted Williams card. And I knew I wanted to take this card home. There's a pretty good market for these, like I said, and this did not come cheap. It wasn't over $100 or anything like that, but it wasn't drastically under $100 either. So there's, you do have to pay up to get star players. But so excited to add this to the collection. Check out this Bullet Joe Rogan. Tell me this doesn't look 100 times better than this Ted Williams company card in the background. I mean, I'm glad to have this one, and I wasn't sure I'd have any Bullet Joe cards, so I don't want to take anything away from the Ted Williams release, and they were the one company to actually bother putting out a Bullet Joe Rogan card, so let's give them credit for that. But at the same time, this Helmar Oasis just absolutely blows that card out of the water. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous card. You've got looks like some trees here in the background, a nice sky, beautiful painting of Rogan. This is the Piedmont variation, so you can see, as I mentioned, they do kind of vary up the cigarettes that are used in the lower corner and on the back. The back's going to be a little different here as well, being Piedmont, but cool shot there of some fans watching some old school baseball and having a smoke back in the day, so I find that pretty funny. And yeah, just ecstatic to add this to the collection. I really didn't think I would be able to find anything featuring Bullet Joe that looked this good and kind of authentic looking. So I was really happy to shell out what I did for that card. I think it was very reasonable in light of how limited the production is on that and how significant his career was in the Negro Leagues and how tough it is to get those guys represented in the collection. So really happy to have that one. That is my latest and probably last for a good while, if not ever, Bullet Joe Rogan card. But I feel good, like I can mark him as completed in my collection and represented, and move on to some of the other guys that I'm still lacking cardboard of. So great job as always by Helmar. Again, if you're not familiar with that brand, I would recommend checking them out. Just Google Helmar on eBay, or search Helmar on eBay, I should say, Helmar. I think the seller name is Sir Raffles, and they have cards ending every single Tuesday night. So great job by them on this card, and thank you very much for stopping by to spend a few minutes of your day checking out my Bullet Joe Rogan. I will certainly be back in the very near future with some more sports card content, and until then, take care and enjoy the hobby.